Okay. So let's go ahead. Who would like to start?
Me?
Sure.
Alopecia lymphocytes infiltration around the follicle and the interstitial pattern.
Yep, so interface pattern.
Interface.
And at what level, given that you still have you've got a keratinized inner root sheath there. Puts you around the isthmus, right?
Isthmus.
So you're looking cross-section. If you were looking vertically, these would be big columns of lymphs that you would see around mid-dermis.
Lupus.
Yeah, exactly. So lupus, and we're used to seeing lupus in vertical section. In transverse section, when you're in mid-dermis, those are big cannonballs of lymphs around the hair follicle that would be vertical columns of lymphs in the mid-dermis in vertical section. And then you see the interface change. May or may not have basement membrane zone thickening, but certainly have pigment incontinence and vacuolar interface change. So, very good. I don't think that's fair to do. Let's do this one. So, has fascicles similar to a palisade encapsulated neuroma, but what's the differentiation of the cells? They have little glycogen vacuoles, little snacks that they're carrying, sort of cigar-shaped nuclei and fascicles. So, smooth muscle differentiation. Does a tibia in a smooth muscle neoplasm mean a whole lot? No, it's just like neural Krauss. Those are the so-called symplastic changes, like ancient change, so that doesn't mean anything. But does the infiltrative growth pattern mean something? And is that cellularity normal for erector pili, or are there more nuclei present than you would normally have in erector pili? So too many nuclei, infiltrative growth pattern, so it's leiomyosarcoma. The soft tissue people would say atypical smooth muscle tumor, because if it doesn't metastasize, they don't want to call it sarcoma. But, it's more widely called leiomyosarcoma. And given that it will infiltrate right down into bone, it's not a bad designation.
Very clear. So from low power, it was like the I can't think of the name, but it's lymphoma.
Oh, like a lymph
Like a
lymphadenoma?
Right, it's the ones that have the clear kind of cells in the middle.
Yeah,
No.
lymphadenoma.
Yeah.
Um,
Doesn't really look like a.
do you think it's lymphadenoma, or do you think those are actually follicles?
They look like follicles from closer.
So,
So,
tell me about your proportion.
I mean, there's lots of cells and around there, almost like lymph in every hole. So,
Like a lymph in every hole, restricted to the follicles. What might that be?
so MF would be
Yeah, exactly. Folliculotropic MF. So it's lymph in every hole in the follicle. Beth and Manuel, we got hits for you.
Yeah, my eye is bothering.
Oh,
I'm
good
just
Lord.
gonna stay back here.
Okay.
That's a bit.
Okay.
Come up here if you want. I don't know.
Yeah. So everyone, Manuel Valdebron is one of my former fellows from New York, who's going to be here on an ASDP mentorship program. So, okay. So welcome to Charleston. Okay, so lymph in every hole, restricted to the follicle, folliculotropic MF.
So got a punch biopsy. That doesn't look super happy.
Fat does not look happy. In fact, looks
it looks
necrotic.
Lobular.
So you have fat necrosis,
Yeah.
necrosis of the lobule. What kind of change is this frost on a window
Frost.
pane change?
Like lipodermatosclerosis.
Lipomembranous, like you'd get in lipodermatosclerosis. Does lipodermatosclerosis usually give you nodular lymphoid aggregates?
No.
So what would give you nodular lymphoid aggregates plus lipomembranous change in the fat?
Nodular infiltrate makes me think of lupus. I don't remember if
Exactly,
it has the
and lupus
frost.
paniculatus can
Okay. It does.
do lipomembranous change. So excellent, you just saved that patient's kidneys. Well done. Good save.
So this looks.
So if it's cut both vertical and transverse, what were they probably looking for?
Alopecia.
So they're looking for an alopecia. And then what kind of hair is that? With necrotic, dead red keratinocytes in it. Catagen. So catagen.
So there's a catagen shift.
So give me a differential for multiple catagen hairs.
I think AA syphilis trichotil.
AA syphilis trichotil. And then we've got a fibrous tract here that's kind of busy with lymphocytes and eosinophils. AA or, you still have to say or syphilis, right? So alopecia areata or syphilis. So this, when it's around the bulb, is what they used to call the swarm of bees. Now we say swarm of bees and ease, because there can be eosinophils in there. And then as the hair withdraws upward, it's left in the fibrous tract. And then after the lymphs clear, only the E's are left. And when they're gone, just some pigment incontinence in the fibrous tract. So that particular one was alopecia areata, but it absolutely could be syphilis as well.
Let's see. It looks pretty granulomatous. I think those are just cysts. And then that material,
What do you think about the way the fat looks?
I mean, there's some sort of lobular paniculitis.
Yeah, kind of blue calcified ghosty,
Yeah, like a pancreatic.
like a pancreatic paniculitis, and what can look just like pancreatic paniculitis.
The cord can mimic it.
So let's take a little closer look.
Oh, yeah.
Just a bit,
Not hard to find.
right? But yeah, a little hard to find. You might struggle, but at scan, it's so characteristic for pancreatic that people have cognitive blindness, right? You see the answer. Your brain doesn't necessarily process beyond the first obvious answer, right? So remember the important lookalikes. Lupus paniculitis can look like, or subacute paniculitis like lymphoma can look like lupus. Syphilis can look like alopecia areata. Mucor can look like pancreatic paniculitis. So all the common lookalikes are important.
Do you want to go?
Yeah. So maybe a morphia type of.
Yeah, exactly. It looks sort of like morphia profunda here. The patient is status post bone marrow transplant, so in this case, looks like morphia, but sclerodermoid GVH. You would need history. I mean, it definitely, I would have said morphia profunda as well, looking at that deep sclerosis. But the, again, look-alike sclerodermoid GVH is called sclerodermoid because it looks just like graft versus host. Or, I'm sorry, it looks just like morphia scleroderma, that's why it's called sclerodermoid GVH. And some mounting evidence that scleroderma may be alloimmune disease to chimeric stem cells from your mom or a child if you're female. And so, you know, all scleroderma may actually be sclerodermoid GVH to some degree, right? Looks like verruca plana. You have gray coilocytes. Remember, in cervix, coilocytes are black, little crenated raisins, whereas in skin, they're usually gray and round. And then you have your corneum that's compact, full of holes, like someone took a little 2 mm punch through a compact corneum. So, verruca plana, very well done. Yep, clear cell acanthoma. Always has a neutrophilic crust, always has neutrophils, typically with karyorrhexis, within the clear epithelium, abrupt cutoff from the surrounding epidermis.
Maybe like a dilated pore.
Dilated pore, except it has big sebaceous lobules all around it.
So like, I don't see any actual hairs going in there. Like
So
maybe a fibrofolliculoma
there actually,
within it.
yeah, there are.
It's like a
So
trichofolliculoma.
sebaceous trichofolliculoma, or those often are called follicular sebaceous cystic hamartoma. So follicular sebaceous cystic hamartoma, which is kind of like a sebaceous trichofolliculoma. And this one with the tuft of hairs in the middle, I think really is a sebaceous trichofolliculoma. It kind of proves that concept.
Soft tissue thing.
Soft tissue thing.
Honeycomb infiltrate in the subcutis.
Honeycomb infiltrate in the subcutis. DFSP.
Or diffuse NF.
Or diffuse NF, and that's your differential, right? And this is from a von Recklinghausen's patient, and was diffuse NF, but they really look similar, right? Myxoid DFSP and diffuse NF can be dead ringers. Myxoid DFSP tends to lose its CD34 staining. In diffuse neurofibroma, you have very prominent CD34 staining in a thumbprint pattern. So it's a very characteristic pattern that you get in neurofibroma.
What about spindle cell lipoma?
Spindle cell lipoma would be a thought. You usually don't get single file rows of lipocytes in spindle cell lipoma. And you usually don't get big, long, parallel fascicles of fibrous tissue. But that would be another thing that can look similar to diffuse NF or DFSP.
You said that thumbprint CD34 was pretty characteristic for diffuse.
Very characteristic for neurofibroma, thought to be so characteristic for neurofibroma that when it was discovered in some desmoplastic melanomas, that was surprising to people. But, you know, you can never say never, never say always in medicine, right? But it is highly characteristic.
Would you throw like an S100 on that too?
S100 would be a very good way, or a neurofilament protein. See the little axons in there?
Yeah, I can try to get off this. Looks like you have an infiltrate dermis. Some mucin in there. So like that blood cell extravasation and neutrophils there.
And then how about all of these? Tell me about nuclear cytoplasmic ratio.
Looks high.
So high nuclear cytoplasmic ratio, atypical mitoses, rows of cells, some little white circles within the islands, and in some areas cells with a lot of big blue nuclei floating in a sea of mucin.
So that makes me think of mucinous carcinoma.
Yeah, so the whole thing is a metastatic adeno, portions of it almost in a carcinoma on Cross type pattern and parts of it in a mucinous carcinoma pattern. Not bad for one eye tied behind your back.
It's difficult on the screen too because everything's so zoomed in.
Say again?
It's difficult on the screen too because everything is so sort of zoomed in.
Well, that is true. That is true.
Collection of blood vessels. It's like someone might be thrombosed.
Yep.
It's like there's almost like a separation, kind of PG-like, but it's deeper.
Yeah, it looks kind of PG-like, all those blood vessels. Now, how about at the side here?
So, are those sebaceous? Looks like vacuolated.
Yeah, so kind of clear tubules, lots of blood.
It was like a glomeruloid hemangioma.
So it looks very hemangioma at scan, doesn't it?
Renal.
It's renal carcinoma with the tubules there, and just the blood vessels have kind of squashed all the renal tubules out, so it is a simulant of hemangioma, but it's just a very, very bloody renal met. So continuing the theme of things that look like other things, right? When you just have to, know what are your simulants, what are your pitfalls.
The dermis is pretty blue-gray, it looks like.
Yeah, so how old do you think your patient is?
Pretty old.
Pretty old. Lots of solar elastosis.
So some like interface and
Interface, and what kind? Are your basal layer intact or basal layer gone, squamatized?
layers gone.
So what kind of interface then?
Yeah, lichenoid interface.
Yeah, so a lichenoid interface, and then in other areas just lots of dead reds at the junction. Right? Almost like an early EM. So lots of dead reds like an early EM, lichenoid interface, And this is an old person with eyes and lips that look almost like erythema multiforme.
PNP.
That's exactly what it is, paraneoplastic pemphigus. And again, talking about lookalikes, remember PNP histologically often looks more like erythema multiforme or lichen planus than it does like pemphigus. So you have to put it together with the clinical. There we go. So something perforating, and what is perforating? Osteoma cutis. And when there are multiple like that, spitting out through follicles, it's usually post-acne, right? So you got like bird shot all through your face after acne. So very blue cells. And then just focally you have some vacuolated cells. So I think this is,
Last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, it looks like the pilomatricoma we had last week, but this one I think is actually a sebaceous adenoma that's just very, very basaloid. It was labeled pilomatricoma.
I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same kind. So
I think that is sebaceous. I think
we need to fish that other pox.
I think we are cutting into something, it's clearly pilosebaceous. So is it all, pilomatricoma with no matrical differentiation yet, or is it a sebaceous adenoma with very little sebaceous? I'd get an EMA on it if I were dealing with it today.
A broad shave or something.
Okay, so as a clinician, you going after small game or big game?
Big game.
What kind of big game for a big long broad
Probably
shave?
Lenogoma now
Or
MF.
or MF. I mean, those are the two times where we get big, wide.
Okay.
So which one do you think this is? LM. Right. You've got areas of poorly nested melanocytes, irregularly spaced nests. So, like a malignant.
So we've got a lot of lymphoid cells deep around the deep dermis and fat.
You
some
said
histiocytes.
you said lymphoid cells. You
Yes,
sticking
they're
with
just very
lymphoid
blue.
cells?
Yeah.
Very blue. So give me a blue cell differential.
Let's see. Merkel cell.
Yep.
Small cell lung. Oat cell.
Merkel, small cell lung, oat cell, those would be the two most common, but lymphoma, small cell endocrine, neuroblastoma, those are all in your differential, and this one was a Merkel. But at scan, you can see how lymphoid or how even on a bad day infiltrative BCC. Just hope it's not a bad day. Okay.
So pretty big specimen.
All the way down into striated muscle, right? Pushing that muscle apart.
So here it almost has like the DFSP versus
Like a DFSP, so myxoid DFSP, or,
diffuse neuroblastoma.
and this is another NF1 patient. I mean, they really look, and it infiltrates into muscle. I mean, it really looks a growth pattern like a DFSP with this, very common look-alike. Okay.
Some severe elastosis. That kind of looks pretty high up. Some
What do you have here?
acidic infiltrate. I guess a fibrous tract. So,
And what's in the fibrous tract?
some pigmented things.
Lots of pigments. What kind of things will give you pigment in fibrous tract?
I guess trichotil can.
Does
maybe-
trichotil or more AA syphilis?
I guess more AIDS.
More AA syphilis, right? So that's kind of where I'd be going with this. You have kind of a miniaturizing hair there too. And I cannot read what it says on the slide, but that's certainly... What does that say?
I think they meant to say alopecia areata.
Okay.
The last is like areata. So I don't know
Okay.
what the first is.
I have no idea what the first says, but the slide is certainly alopecia areata. So. Or syphilis. You always have to say or syphilis. Okay.
Yeah.
Normal corneum sitting on top of a layer of compact corneum. Yeah. So I'd always want to look in the compact corneum to see if there's something there, because that layered horn is a good clue for tinea.
Normal skin differential.
Yes.
Correct. That's also normal skin differential, but you've got... They're subtle, but you see little circles in there. And then at scan, your clue just being layered corneum. Normal basket weave on top of compact red. Let's do this one.
Dense infiltrate. What's the edema?
Dense infiltrate, very neutrophilic,
Junior
right?
sweets.
So PG sweets, I would definitely have been there with you. Is your epidermis intact?
There's not.
Epidermis is not intact, kind of necrotic. And if we saw it earlier in its course, it actually would have started with necrosis of the sebaceous gland, and then necrosis of the rest of the follicle, and then on to necrosis of the dermis.
HSV.
It's shingles, zoster. Just with the underlying vasculitis, really going to sheets of neutrophils. That's unusual. That would have been tough.
I only got a melanocytic proliferation. It looks kind of bad.
Melanocytic, kind of bad.
Yep.
So is it symmetrical?
Not really.
No. Do these mature or disperse?
No.
Do they push and bulldoze the connective tissue beyond them?
Yep.
And confluence at the junction, effacement of the redes, that's vertical growth phase melanoma.
Maybe PAN.
Maybe PAN. Large vessel down in the fat, concentric, wreath-like muscularis, fat necrosis surrounding it, polyarteritis nodosa.
Pretty dense infiltrate at the DJ.
And is your basal layer intact or basal layer destroyed?
Looks like destroyed.
destroyed, and dead reds. So lichenoid differential, which includes LP, lichenoid drug, acral lupus, lichenoid regression of melanocytic, lichenoid graft versus host, all of those lichenoid things, and which one tends to have a really mixed corneum. Or instead of being uniform, the corneum's a little of this, a little of that, all through. Benign lichenoid keratosis is the one that tends to have the mixed corneum.
Skin deeper.
Yeah, so like a soft tissue neoplasm again.
Like a little spindled.
And you got these rosettes of round cells around something, and the something they're around is vascular.
Split angiosperm.
You do have some small slit-like vascular spaces, but the bulk of the tumor seems to be these rounder, more epithelioid cells that are forming rosettes around the vessels. So what's around the vessel?
Like more like an angiolama.
Or myoparasitoma, where you have the parasites forming cuffs.
Professor, how about the hemangioparasitoma?
Hemangioparasitoma, which most of those are now classified as solitary fibrous tumor. The vessels, a little bit staghorn, which these are, but it tends to remain spindle-celled, and you don't get those rosettes. You don't get circles, rosettes of cells around the vessel in this one. But that is a good thing, good thought in the differential.
Little papule with dilated vascular spaces. I'm assuming it's like a lymphangioma of sorts.
Yep, lymphangioma of sorts. Very good.
Little thin shave
Yep.
with sparse infiltrate. Is it a cornate lamella maybe forming?
I don't think it quite makes it to a cornoid lamella, but you have almost a flag sign, right? So first question is, could it just be AK, or is it areas of altered corneum for some other reason? Is your basal layer intact? Do you have dead reds? Yeah, so you sort of have areas of lichenoid interface. So again, there's a little bit of atypia there. So it could just be lichenoid AK or something else. Lichenoid, let's see what the history is. Cannot read that again. What does it say?
Something papule. L something papule.
It's a lichenoid something.
Lichenoid pack.
Maybe it says lichenoid papule.
I don't know. Okay. You are correct. This is acral lentiginous melanoma. You have gray melanocytes, and they're up in the arches. They're angulated. They're not, the nuclei aren't round. They're elongated, angulated, sitting often in little vacuoles. The dendrites are asymmetrical.
Is it like
like spitting cells into the corneum, or
It
what's
is
that?
spitting some
Okay.
cells into the corneum, which is also not normal behavior, right? How we doing time-wise? So superficial infiltrate. And do you have lumen to your vessels? Or is there endothelial swelling? Really no lumen to the vessels. Lots of EOs. And then any other clues? Cut deeper, looking for scabes. And you don't have to cut deeper. You're already there, right? So the dermis looks like arthropod reaction, right? It looks like a bite. Endothelial swelling, polymorphous infiltrate, lots of EOs, and then the reason we say arthropod is could be a bite, could be a sting, could be an infestation.
When I think about syphilis,
Think about
syphilis.
Oh, syphilis. Well, with the endothelial swelling, yes. Lots of EOs, unusual, more bug bite like. And then, do patients with scabies, can they also have syphilis? They can. But this one, I think you can account for everything you see just by the scabies and the arthropod-like reaction.
Well, maybe I can imagine it's clawing around there. Like a ball and claw, but not exactly characteristic. Looked like there's maybe some pigment incontinence in it.
Yeah, so some pigment incontinence, and actually a lot of that apparent pigment is formalin pigment, means that your formalin buffer didn't work very well, right? So you got formalin pigment there. You got something that's almost a little DF-like, but with prominent vascular ectasia, and it's a bump on facial skin. It's an angiofibroma, kind of an inflamed angiofibroma that's had a bad week. Sometimes I feel like an angiofibroma that's had
This doesn't look good. There's a lot of pigment. And
So what kind of pigmented thing doesn't look good? I'll accept that. Okay.
There's some psoriasiform acanthosis.
Yeah. So if you're thinking not a whole lot,
Then I would say
I'm there with you. There's a little bit of superficial lymphoid, some sponge. What's that in the corneum?
lots of parakeratosis.
Parakeratosis. What's the clinical equivalent of parakeratosis?
Scale.
Scale. If it scales.
Striated.
This was tinea. I mean, it looks like subacute sponge, but it was tinea.
That's infiltrate.
Tell me about your corneum.
Is it a dia? Sorry, what was that, Doctor? Is it a dia?
Yeah, it's a dermatofibroma. So you have plate-like acanthosis overlying a neoplasm. Name 3 neoplasms that give you acanthosis rather than effacement.
It's granular dia.
So granular cell tumor, Spitz, DF, and this one is certainly not a granular cell tumor or a Spitz, so that helps narrow it down.
Maybe an FFA. LPP.
Yeah, but your sebaceous glands are intact.
Yeah, that's right.
So sebaceous glands intact, catagen hair,
Alopecia areata.
fibrous tracts with pigment, alopecia areata. Absolutely. Well done. Same one we saw before.
Looks like soft.
But today we're going to call it a sebaceous adenoma. Okay. Next one. What is that? Fibroepithelioma of Pincus. Very good. And if you missed that one, there's only one honorable way out.
They're just getting a lot of diagnoses that have that now.
It's getting tougher. Stakes are getting higher.
Kind of Mermisha.
Mermisha, like, very good. That's exactly what it is. A little slow, but good.
It's a Blake punch.
So mean.
Interstitial GA.
Hey, we got the diagnosis.
Except that those
some
are
KS thing.
all little vessels. So KS, but does it aggregate around pre-existing structures or not really? Could it be a simulant look-alike for KS made up of tiny little venules?
Microvenular.
Microvenular hemangioma. Very good. And you have to say it just like that. Microvenular hemangioma.
I want to see another slide. It seems there's some information there.
But actually, you don't want to see another slide. You want to see that one right there.
Oh.
Oh, scabies.
Yes. But is it part of the epidermis or is it under the epidermis? With hypergranulosis and keratin pearls?
Like Denverhead.
Doesn't have squamous eddies. So just starting out of multiple follicles, this is going to become a big crateriform. That's early KA. Hypergranulosis and keratin pearls arising out of follicles and then becoming more crateriform over time. So that's why plastic cover slips are the work of the devil, right? Because they don't last.
So there's palpate
great.
granuloma with some necrobiosis in the middle.
Yeah, or fibrin or something. So what are you thinking?
So it doesn't look naked. I want to go in on a bug hunt, make sure there's no weird infection.
So bug hunt is reasonable. What else?
I mean, I guess it could be NXG if it is necrobiosis. It could be GA.
So GA with fibrin would be more deep GA, which is
Right.
what this is, or rheumatoid nodule, although multiple little ones like that, patchy is more like a GA pattern. So deep GA. And we call it deep GA even when it isn't deep, right? Let's see.
Kind of acantholytic or it's
So acantholytic usually refers to the acanth.
yeah, it's in there. It's some spaces in the
Spaces in the dermis.
KS.
Yeah, KS-like, or and I'll give you this. Absolutely, could be KS, or conventional angiosarc, which this was. So a very ectatic conventional angiosarc or a lymphangiomatoid KS. If it wasn't an old man on the forehead, I probably would check an HHV8 in it. So, is it sharply circumscribed or poorly circumscribed? It's sharply circumscribed, ends in a nest.
Spitz.
What kind of spitz? Is small spindled cells.
Reed.
Yeah, sort of like a Reed's nevus. And now it looks like there's unique genomics in Reed's nevus. So if you're a Reed believer, you say, see, it is a separate entity, or otherwise you say, there's a type of spitz that has a very unique characteristic signature. So either way, still not settled. I say throw the guy a bone.
And there's a lot of little hairs.
Yeah, lots of little hairs. Like what part of the body?
Like the face? I'm not sure.
Yeah, like lid or ear has lots and lots of little hairs like that. And this is kind of a
Wondering
bump.
if it's an accessory trait.
That's exactly what it is an accessory tragus. No cartilage, but accessory tragus, because it looks like ear skin.
Looks like there's a split. I can't tell if these are like monocytic cells. There's a lot of pigment.
Tell me about the epidermis.
It's doesn't look very healthy.
Thinned or acanthotic?
One part's acanthotic, one part's thin.
But at least part of it, right over the tumor, is acanthotic. And then you commented on pigment. Name 3 brown pigments in skin.
Hemosiderin, lipofuscin, and melanin.
Okay, and so with acanthosis, take a guess what pigment that is.
Hemosiderin.
Hemosiderin, because this is
Yeah.
dermatofibroma. The other thing that's pathognomonic, see those red collagen donuts
Yes.
around vessels? That's pathognomonic for DF too. So if you saw ringed siderophage, if you saw the red collagen donuts, any of those would have acanthosis over a tumor, all of those things could help you get there.
It looks like a wart.
Looks like a wart. Happy wart or evil wart?
In there, it's evil.
Evil wart. So, probably 2 mechanisms to get Bowens out of a wart. One is when it's an HPV type, like 1518, that genital type wart. The other is if you already have baseline AK, so you already have very atypical skin, and now you introduce a proliferative stimulus to that already atypical skin. So probably either way you can grow Bowens out of a wart. How are we doing time-wise? We got about 10 more minutes. Should be able to do about 40 more slides.
Dermoid cyst.
Yeah, like a dermoid cyst, or since it's mainly sebaceous there, follicular sebaceous cystic hamartoma would be the other thing. So dermoid, if they're better developed into follicles and you see some eccrine in there maybe too, or just follicular sebaceous cystic hamartoma. And sometimes they exist on a continuum, so that's fine to have some overlap there. Okay, let's do this one. Kind of. So that's a little CNH-ish, right? But it's over a little tumor. Poroid thing, exactly. So it doesn't palisade, it has cytoplasm, and it has little white circles that are attempts at duct formation. Right. So no palisade, ample cytoplasm.
So superficial perivascular, looks lymphoid infiltrate. Doesn't really look like it makes it up to the junction. Yeah, that's scaba.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, some kind of regular xanthosis. Just gotta look in the horn. There's some tinea there.
And there was.
Oh, what did I see?
Yep.
Adult.
Adult myofibroma. Very good. Blue, hypocellular blue nodules surrounded by hemangioparasitoma-like proliferation. So adult myofibroma. Very good. So you're just seeing the top of this. What kind of thing gives you spindle cells with erythrocytes between the spindle cells? KS. This is you see the collagen is very red, very skinny. So that's kid skin. So what looks kind of like KS in a kid? Kind of looks caposiform. So KHE, caposiform hemangioendothelioma. And you can see how caposiform it can look.
This is the same thing as Rachel had in melanoma.
It is the same, not the same slide, but the same diagnosis. So irregular nesting, band-like, lymphoid infiltrate, host response that doesn't like it.
Papillomas. So maybe that's some acantholysis.
Just acantholysis?
Some dyskeratosis.
So you're saying there's acantholysis and dyskeratosis? Give me a differential.
Acantholytic sarcoma, Darius, acantholytic squam.
Growers, all of those things. And this is a patient with red and white streaks in the nail. Halo nevus, well done. So you have gray cells and then like a band through it. Intimately mixed with it are the little black cells. So that is in fact a halo nevus. Yep, spindle cells, erythrocytes between. This one is not a KID, and this one is KS. But you see how KHE comes by its name, honestly. Like, it's very, very caposiform.
Lysis.
Just acantholysis,
Dyskeratosis.
dyskeratosis, and this thing is kind of seb-like. With yeah, so it could be vulval curl dyskeratosis, could be just acantholytic dyskeratoma. You need the clinical.
Got a lot of pigment deep with like some bluish looking stuff.
Lots of pigment deep cells that look like that.
Is that like a giant? I don't know.
It's a wreath giant cell with brown stuff in it.
So it's a rim sauropod.
So this is a dermatofibroma, and you can see all the collagen trapping and pigment at the periphery.
So there's a large blue nodule. Going down into the fat, maybe like the FSP.
And that is a very storiform pattern, right? So you are correct, the FSP. Healthy or unhealthy collagen?
It's pretty unhealthy.
With something kind of lined up around it.
Yes, some palisated microbiosis.
Yep, so this is
Deep GA.
yeah, it's probably GA, you know, kind of focal patchy throughout the dermis.
Is it CAS?
So
Oh, the squamous.
squamous eddies, so it is a very wild, irritated seb. Lots of spindling and squamous eddies. Okay, we're done.